Yeah, so Tiffany, the other week you had texted me. I don't recall what you wanted to talk about. What would you like to talk about today?
Yeah, so I'm just ready to like really just take my business to the next level. I feel like I've gotten really comfortable with referral business that comes in. So I'm really like lax when it comes to any and all systems. I have an assistant I've been working with for like over a year and I just haven't trained her properly. So it's just a big disappointment that I can only point at myself to. And like I've gone to so many workshops and seminars and like kind of know what to do, but then I get overwhelmed with all the tasks to get my business running and like just a streamlined process, and I'll try to keep everything in order, and then life happens and I'm just so involved in my life and all my activities that I just let go. And so I'm
Yeah,
I'm tired of that. I want to expand my business because I know I have immense potential with just the business I've built with my influence. And I really want to just set it up so that I can, just hand it off or at least have other people to make sure everything is clean and neat and it's more of a representation of how I want my business to run.
yeah. What do you use an outside transaction coordinator, or is this person doing your transactions?
I do use a transaction coordinator. Right now I'm using Sarah
Okay.
Cadman.
Okay.
But this person, I mean, she does marketing for me and kind of just like whatever task I throw at her. But when I don't throw things at her, I feel like she's just not really doing much. Plus, she just had a baby herself, so like sometimes she's being late and stuff. So I know I have to like raise my standards all around, but I don't want to start over until I like know exactly what I want and have it mapped out for the next person. So I'm in that like
Yeah.
uncomfortable, unstable like transition period. I'm like
Okay.
fed
So
up with.
are you going to be hiring a new person and replacing the current person you have?
Yeah, I will be soon.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like her life is just too tied up as well. But
Um,
I would like a manual of
yeah.
my business. It could just be like, this is what I expect.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes we have to actually create that with the person. So,
Hmm.
like, there are some personalities out there that really want the other person to do it. I personally am not that person. So, like, I think I'm like you, Tiffany, in that I'm like, all right, this is my vision for how things are going to be implemented. And then you work with that person to like implement it. And then they create the protocol based on what you tell them what to do, rather than asking them to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
you know. Um,
Yeah.
Real quick, Grace, is there anything, I know I left you a message yesterday and we can talk about that certainly. Was there anything that you came to the call wanting to discuss with regard to your business, or any questions you had that were maybe quick before we dive into this other topic?
Just wanted to, find out about are there any I guess like drastic changes that you've seen ever since obviously the nurse settlement, since August 17th, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I just got an email from somebody saying that now he feels really confident that the cold buyer leads that he gets, it's like, yeah, you're going to have to sign something with me, even if it's for a day, you know. And then if you like working with me, we can move on from there. And it just reminded me of when I first started using buyer agency agreements 15 years ago, however long ago it was. I did include a clause that stated you could fire me at any time,
Yeah.
which should be super easy to get people to sign if you convey enough value and you have your standard, you know.
Right.
So yeah, so like he was just saying how much easier it is because now everybody's going to have to do that, and he feels more
Yeah.
strongly. It's always like it's like when you have somebody negotiating on behalf of somebody else, it's always easier to put your foot down because you have somebody else to confer with,
Hmm.
so you can blame. It's like good cop, bad cop.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I want to show you this house, but I
But
can't unless you
right.
sign with me. Oops,
Right.
sorry.
Yeah.
um yeah, and I think getting for sale by owners would be actually easier now, because
Mm.
rather than paying the buyer's agent who's only going to call you if they have a buyer,
Hmm.
pay me. I'm going to work for you every day to find that buyer for you. And nobody's going to know whether or not you're paying a commission. So you can just decide with the offer you get what you're willing to pay, if, depending on the net. So
Right.
like I literally, right before my vacation a week and a half ago, I signed up a listing who he's like in his 70s. He's owned real estate for 40 years. He's done for sale by owner like 6 times. And he's like, you're the 61st agent. Like, tell me why, like, how are you going to convince me to do something different?
Right.
And I was like, and I was like, look, the game has changed. It is completely changed. You no longer, nobody can advertise a commission is being paid.
Yeah.
Let me do the work for you. Oh, give me a real quick second because my vet is calling and my pet was sick. So I'm sorry, give me 1 second. I'm going to mute myself.
Sure. Absolutely.
No problem.
So hi, Tiffany. I'm Grace.
Grace, you part of Stacy's coaching program already?
Yeah. So I started with her a couple of months ago, actually. So I've been licensed since 2021. I started with Keller Williams. And then now I'm actually with Realty Mark. But an agent of I think she was actually with Realty Mark. She was like, hey, you definitely need to check Stacy out. She has this, agent university program. And then I also saw her on one of the podcasts with Pet Lopez, the real estate show. And yeah, I told Stacy, I was like, I wish like I knew about this like the day I started. But it's been great so far. So how about you?
Sorry, is Tiffany coming back, Grace?
I have no idea. She just
Okay. Sorry, I'm still on hold and I can't even hear you. Hold on.
No worries.
Okay. Grace, you there?
Yes.
Oh, there she. Okay. Hey, Tiffany. Sorry about that. I had my dog was diarrhea all last night, and then that was the vet, and so I'm probably gonna have to transfer our call into a Zoom as I drive her down to the vet.
Wow.
But yeah, so like that Facebook conversation, he was like, "You're making me do something I don't want to do," like the game has changed. Like, so it's like really just understanding how the game has changed and understanding that you can either reward the random realtor who finds you offline
Right.
and brings you a buyer, or you can pay me the same amount of money and you don't even pay me until we go to closing to do all the work for you, package it professionally, and make sure 100% of the market knows your house is for sale.
Mhm.
And I will work for you every day to find that buyer,
Right.
for all the same amount of money. So so the conversation has changed with for sale by owners. Regarding Tiffany's question, have you guys ever done, I don't know if it's called the one thing exercise, but I know it's from the book, The One Thing, where you like write a laundry list of everything that you could do for your business. So Tiffany, if you were to think like, what would be great for my assistant to do? And like, for example, mine manages my databases. They're constantly updating my databases with new contact information, adding people, making sure they're tagged properly for certain marketing efforts for certain things. Having all of your communications like ideas in place. Like, I want to send birthday cards, anniversary cards. I want to host parties. I want blah, blah. Have you done a dump, like a mind dump of everything that you could do?
I just did, yeah, I just did again like 2 days ago and I wrote out a nice list. But like
Okay.
definitely with like she does input contacts into my database, but like I need a system where there's like a 30-day like follow-up and then the birthdays. I want to implement like a questionnaire for each buyer. So I'm collecting all types of info and I've created them, but it's just like I haven't sent them out every single time. I just want every transaction to be like duplicatable and
Yeah.
succinct. So it just,
Yeah.
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So after you've created your brain dump, first of all, some of those projects are going to fall within like one category. So for example, you can't necessarily start a campaign if you haven't created the campaign or know who that campaign is for. So implementing, like creating the campaign is one thing, knowing who gets that campaign is another thing. So you have to figure out, of those projects, what's the first domino for each of those projects? So maybe it's helpful to put it in a spreadsheet just so you can organize it by category of project and order it in the order of domino 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for this category of thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for this category of thing. And there may be a domino that is the domino that precedes all of the categories. So for example, if you wanted to implement, a digital campaign, a card campaign, a campaign through an external source other than your database, like getting everybody in your one database in there and tagged appropriately might be that first domino for all of those, right? But then you have to figure out, of all the projects that you potentially have, which is the one that, if you could only do one, which is the best one to start with, because that'll have the most impact. So if, for example, you also want to think about your pipeline and where is the biggest drag on your business. For example, if you're getting enough leads and you're setting appointments, but you're not converting those appointments, then you don't necessarily need more leads or more appointments. You need to do whatever you can to get more referrals or signatures from those appointments. And so maybe it's a matter of your pre-qualification of those appointments. Maybe it's your talking points in those conversations. Maybe it's the follow-up from those conversations. Maybe it's the brochures or information you bring to those conversations. So like figuring out where, if you increased your skill to a high level, would you have the most impact? If let's say you're successful in signing buyers, signing sellers, but your listings aren't selling or your buyers aren't buying, all right, what are the conversations you need to be having to get the buyers to make a decision? Or what do you need to do better pricing, or your pricing is great, it's they're not listening to you. You know, so it's really diagnosing which bucket is going to get you the income the fastest. So the one thing exercise is basically like, you know, let's say you have 100 items on your list, and like you put them in different buckets. So now let's say you've got 20 buckets with a couple of bullet points each. It's like, all right, of these 20 buckets, which are the top 20% projects that's going to get me the fastest business? You know, so, you know, if you're not getting business from like social media, for example, you have an idea as to how to really maximize your social media presence, don't start there. That's not the fastest way to business. You know, the fastest way to business would be to convert what you have, or pre-qualify the appointments you're going on, or doing more lead generation, you know, and systemizing that. So you pick the top, so out of 20, you'd pick the top 4 projects that would get you the most money, the most impact immediately. And then from the top 4, you know, you'd pick your top 1. So you're constantly saying, what's my 20% of all of these? What's my 20% of the reduced, you know, group? So off the top of your head, with that in mind, do you have a sense of what is that one thing that if you did first, that would be that top 20 of 20% most impactful?
Well, for me, I think the most important thing right now for my business, given the changes that have just occurred, are like really going over new listing presentations and buyer consultations with the new education that we have to convey, and working on a script for that to flow naturally and to just see like the most educated and trustworthy real estate professional out there. Because I really don't have a problem with getting business, like, but like I've like explained before, like I've gotten comfortable with like even the small business that I have is enough. And then like with the other like assets that I have, I've just gotten comfortable where like I know if my, you know, systems were in place, my presentations were a lot cleaner, I could take on a lot more. But so yeah, so that's important to me. I think those presentations, so that when I have that, I'll feel more comfortable getting more. And yeah, so have you changed your presentations around, or like completely like revamped them since all the changes?
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm gonna transfer to my phone. So hold on, I'm gonna stay online. I'm gonna get off the,
Okay.
let me just see if I can get on here just so we can get mobile. All right, let's say connecting. Oh, I'm
Recording in
Whoa! Echo. Okay, let's see. Sign. All right.
Huh?
Okay.
There you go.
Claim host. Okay. I reclaimed my hostess with the mostest. Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Is Tiffany there still? Okay. Okay. So, well, let me ask you this. What do you currently do, Tiffany, to process buyers? When somebody reaches out and say, hey, I want to buy a house, what's your first step?
Well, I get like the preliminary information, you know, their email, their full name. I make sure that that's put into the database with an opportunity, and then I get them financing. I usually do like a group chat with my lender, and I pretty much wait until they're pre-approved to continue a lot of the conversation, depending on like whether we're doing a phone call. Sometimes I will entertain a phone call, but I know it's like more important to get them pre-approved before we talk about the types of homes and the price point and all that stuff. So sometimes I'll just touch base with them, send them off to the lender, and then go into more of a consultation. But even that is pretty informal. I gauge, yeah, I gauge like their needs. Like a lot of times they're referrals of people that have already sung my praises. So I feel like I don't have to give them too much, which is, you know, probably not the best way to look at things. But, you know, if I have like, you know, an older couple that I'm sure they would prefer more professionalism, then I will sit down and talk with them and go over the spiel. But yeah, it's been pretty informal. It's like, all right, you're pre-approved. Tell me what you're looking for. Let's go out ASAP. And then I just try to get rid of them as soon as possible.
Okay, well, then I'm sure there's a lot you can bring to the table before you even go out looking at properties that's going to show your value, because you know,
especially now.
Yeah, I'm gonna put you in my pocket, so I'm turning the video off so you're not staring at like a weird blank space.
but I am
Okay.
still here. Okay.
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 Mm.
So let me ask Grace. Grace, have you dealt with any buyers lately with the changes?
New buyers, no. I have buyers that already signed, obviously prior to the changes.
Okay.
But I'm pretty much kind of like the same way as Tiffany. A lot of my current clients that I do have are referrals or people that I already know. So it is a little bit informal.
Yeah.
They kind of just call me, or they actually, you know, say that, oh yeah, I saw your video on Facebook or whatever. Or a friend of mine gave me your number and we kind of bonded over that, right? Because it's like, oh, who can I thank, you know, for sending you over to me. And then we kind of just chat about, again, you know, their motivation, you know, the reason why they want to make a purchase, and obviously talk to them about the process so they know what to expect, so there's no surprises, you know, because a lot of the times they think like, oh, I have the money, I want that house, and like that's it, we're gonna go get it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't understand there's, you know, the inspection contingency, appraisal contingency, like they're not aware of any of that, or like title, like why is it important, you know? So just kind of like breaking it down to them, because they really do think like, okay, I'm just gonna get pre-approved, and even when they do get pre-approved, they automatically assume that they are approved for the loan. Which obviously isn't the case, you know. So
Right.
just kind of like breaking it down, you know, what the process is, so they know exactly what to expect. And then, you know,
What?
yeah.
Oh, let me ask this. What tool, like, are you using like anything that you got from me or anything
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
okay,
I
to show them?
downloaded, yep, I downloaded your templates, you know, asking all the questions, basically just pre-qualifying them, you know. But yeah, I use that.
Do you use the flow chart or the closing cost estimate to explain the process to them, or you just kind of go and?
Um, Most likely I do, but it depends on the person that I'm talking to. Because some of them, like, they're aware of the process too, like, oh yeah, my mom just bought a house, like she told me this and that, you know. But most likely
Most,
I try to follow.
even the most, it is doubtful that just because somebody else went through the process
Yeah,
that they know what happened. Even like the most
right.
educated people do not remember what went on when they bought their property.
Yeah. Especially if it happened like years ago, it's maybe it could be a little
Exactly.
different, you know. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
So I always couch it to people like, you know, I know like, especially if it's a second time home buyer or the first time buyer that has a family, like, oh, that's great. I love working with people who are familiar with the process. And just
right,
because I wasn't there to help them, I want to make
right.
sure we're on the same page and you have all the
Yeah,
information. So, you know, I'll give you a very high level overview. And if you have any questions as we go, let me know. Or if
yeah.
you know, if you need more information. So you can
Mhm.
always make sure that you're not condescending to them,
Yeah,
you know, but you're not taking for granted that they remember anything. And they're usually very appreciative of that.
right, right.
Okay. So
I think the most important thing that
yeah.
I always try to mention is the importance of having representation, because again, a lot of people, they don't know that there's the buyer's agent and then there's the seller's agent. Like there are two sides.
Yeah.
Like people are not aware of that, you know? So I
Yeah.
think just, you know, breaking that down. And then of course, you know, I'll mention that there is a buyer agency contract, and with, you know, with the changes, they said, oh, now it's, you know, it's mandatory, right? But um I've always had a buyer agency consultation, having them sign the buyer agency
Yeah.
contract anyway, because that's what I was taught in
Yeah.
KW.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that part, like it's not new to me, you know.
Right. Yeah. 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 And you know, I always refer to that document as the document that puts me to work for them
Correct.
and,
Yep.
and gives me that fiduciary responsibility to them
Exactly.
to put their interests and needs above anybody else in the transaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then like a great line is like, okay, great. So when do you want to see houses? Okay, great. So in order to do that, the next thing we need to do is get you pre-approved
Yep.
and sign the buyer agency paperwork that puts me to work for you.
Yes.
You know, can you get that done by this date?
Yeah.
You know, and then that just sets the stage, because now you've given them something to work towards and ask for what you want them to do.
Right. You sound just like my productivity coach. Good.
Okay. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity, Tiffany, to add a lot of value up front by having that consultation with the buyer in advance of even having them talk to the lender, because you're going to be able to potentially refer them a lender that might be a better fit for them by having a conversation with them first. And well, let me ask you this, how comfortable are you preparing closing cost estimates?
Pretty comfortable.
Okay. So I use the closing cost estimate as a tool to show my, I guess, prowess with being able to help them identify the home for them that's affordable. And I use it also to explain the process to them. And it shows them how much more there is to, buying a home than just looking at a home.
You do that with the first buyer consultation?
Yeah. So let me just put in my pet companion. Let me just put get my.
And you use the one on Bright?
Yes.
Or do you use a separate tool? Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, are you factoring the new buyer agent commission into that now?
Yeah. So it's basically the conversation while you're talking to them is a little.
Oops, sorry, we kind of lost you there, Stace. We can't hear you if you are talking.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
All right. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. So you could ask them, are you familiar, or what is your understanding of how I get paid in the process? And I'm not going to have that conversation until the very end, because I'm going to show all my value up front, and you can even pepper in ways that you're going to save them money. So, explaining up front that representation means, rather than calling 10 listing agents to see 10 homes with agents who represent the seller and may cost on average, 45 minutes to see any one home, imagine if you're in the city and you drive someplace, it might take you 15 minutes to get there. You look at the home for 15 minutes to get home, or it could be an hour, depending on where you live. So 45 minutes to an hour per listing. So let's just call it 10 showings, 1 hour. So that's 6 hours versus I can show you 10 homes inside of 3 to 4 hours, depending on travel times, so number one, you're going to demonstrate your value as you go. And number two, you're going to share with them that, you're only going to show them houses they can afford. And once you identify a house to buy, you're going to research the pricing on the home, because the listing agent really can't tell you if they're willing to negotiate. They represent the seller. As your agent, I can find out for you, how long it's been on the market, what do other homes sell for that are similar to it. Have there been any price reductions? I'll try to find out the seller's motivation, so basically highlighting that you're advocating for them. And then of course, in terms of inspections, if they were to go to a listing agent, you could consider it malpractice if the listing agent recommends a sewer scope, because you, as a listing agent, you shouldn't want all of the inspections to be done. You want as few inspections to be done, right? So as the fiduciary for them, you're going to make sure that they get all the right inspections, and you're going to negotiate those for them, because your job is to help them, make a good, sound financial decision in the short term, or the long term rather. And how many, have you guys gone on a lot of home inspections? How comfortable are you pointing out oh, these windows are old, or these look newer, or this heater looks newer, older? How do you guys feel about all that?
I mean, only if something's like glaringly like messed up will I try to point it out. I kind of let the inspection report do its thing, but I'm more so kind of trying to gauge their expectation and be like, listen, no home is perfect. You know, depending on the case, right? If they have like a decent home that needs some upgrades, you know, for a decent price, I'm like, listen, like, let's be hopeful here. Like, all of this you can fix in time. You know, you want to focus on what's really like not working, non-functional or hazardous. But I
Well,
don't try to like point out too much.
okay, yeah. So like during the walkthrough, like I think one of the reasons why I can add a lot of value to a transaction is because I've gone on so many home inspections that I'm pretty decent at identifying things that are going to cost the buyer in the long run, like where they might have to save up thousands of dollars for a new heater, you know, or look at these windows, you know, and point out things that they're not necessarily aware of before they
Yeah.
even make an offer.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, and then the other thing is really understanding buyer finance and crunching those numbers for them and like being able to explain the process because then, you know, I can be a lot more nimble when I am negotiating on their behalf and not rely on the lender so much, you know, when we're actually putting the offer in. Um, so yeah, so the way I do it is, you know, somebody's referred to me and I ask them to fill out an intake form. And the critical information that I'm looking for are how much do you want to spend per month? What are your assets? Like how much do you want to put down, including your closing costs? I want a dollar amount. I don't want a percentage because I need to know if you have money for closing costs. I want to know, generally speaking, where and what kind of home you're looking for. And then in that way, I can, you know, set up a basic search before we even meet. Like, for example, I literally am talking to a buyer tomorrow. It's our second conversation. So when we first spoke, he filled out everything and it was before the changes and he only had $2,000 in the bank. So I'm like, I'm not even going to talk to him about commission right now. I need him to get pre-approved. And
Yeah.
the only way he can buy right now is if he qualifies for this program that has a $25,000 grant in addition to covering the balance of a 5% down payment, where he only needs to come out of pocket with $2,000. Because, you know, I just basically paid for myself because I'm going to charge $10,000 minimum. He's looking at a house of 250. I'm not getting in the car and showing you 15 homes for
Yeah.
less than that, you know? So I didn't even have this conversation with him until I was sure that he could get financing. So tomorrow we'll have the conversation. And in the meantime, you know, I don't like, I know what my standards are. So I don't necessarily need to know what people are willing to pay a buyer's agent, but just so I can come to that conversation with closing estimates on his like 3 top favorite homes or like one at a low price point and one at a high price point and show the various scenarios of like, hey, this is my minimum commission and this is like they're willing to offer this. So this is what it would look like to pay, you know, to pay me out of pocket. Or, hey, they'd be willing to pay all of it or most of it. And this is what it would look like. So
Yeah.
on the one hand, you can do a hypothetical, like originally, actually I did do this months ago with a buyer who's like under 3 as well. And I did see what the commission that was being offered. So I was able to run specific scenarios. And like, it really just jumped out at me that, you know, if he bought a house for 200, like I would get paid like maybe $6,000, maybe less. If he bought a house for 300,000, I could get paid up to $9,000. And I was like, that spread is a 50% spread. That is ridiculous. You know, like, so I established, all right, 10 grand, that's my minimum, because then I'm excited to show you all the houses you want to see, you know, like at 200,000, it doesn't matter to me the price. That's like, you know, like, so it takes any like motivation on my end to help you buy a more expensive house. It takes that out of the equation because I know I'm going to get paid one, you know, regardless of that. So when sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask you, is that what you're doing now? Is like offering more of a flat fee depending on their price
So
point?
yeah, anybody under 350, I'm just going to say it's going to be 10K flat
Okay.
because chances are like, I mean, a lot of times when people have a range, they end up buying at the higher end of their range, but I'm not
Yeah.
willing to take a risk, you know, that they end up buying something cheaper. I'm not going to be sitting there grumbling because like right before I set that minimum standard for myself, I had a buyer who was buying something. They were trying to stay close to 200, and I was working with a showing agent, and that agent got us under contract with a property that had I seen it, I would be like, this would never have passed the appraisal. And at the time I had a $6,500 minimum. And then we went under contract with another home with extensive inspection negotiations. So I essentially sold them 2 homes, you know, for the price of half. And, you know, because I ended up paying out an agent to do the showings. So
Right.
I was just like, I know the work and the hand holding that goes into working with lower buyers or lower price point buyers. And,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that like I put you in touch with somebody that's going to give you like, I don't know, $30,000 of grants. Yeah, you can make up the difference, you know. And I'm going to help identify things that'll cost you in the long run, you know. So yeah, so you have to figure out what your value is and figure out what people are willing to pay you.
Could grants cover some of our commission?
Yeah. I mean, like essentially, if it covers their other closing costs and they have to come out of pocket, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's the only thing that we'd have to worry about is right now, VA buyers. I don't know if the law has changed to allow them to pay commission yet. I've heard conflicting information about like FHA allows you to finance your, you know, the buyer's agent commission. And then another lender is like, I haven't heard that. So I don't know what to believe at this point. But yeah, so with the example of the buyer where I did know the commissions, I ran a couple of estimates with a couple of scenarios. So on the lower end, I was like, okay, if you buy a house at 200 and this property is offering 3%, the balance of the 10,000 commission, I'm just going to make up a number, is 4K. This is what it's going to look like if you pay it out of pocket in cash. And then I said, well, this is what it's going to look like if the seller is willing to pay it, you know, without it coming out of your pocket in cash at the same price. And then I was like, and this is what it's going to cost if we add it to the sales price and give the seller the same net and you finance it as a, you know, seller assist. So, or, you know, the seller's paying it out of a higher sales price. So, you know, ultimately I showed him that even at the worst case scenario, if he had to, if the seller was willing to pay it, but at a higher sales price, I would have cost him like another $30 a month, you know, per month, but I was showing him the value. So it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'll work with you.
But question, Stacey, like you just mentioned, you know, the way you ask for commission, like $10,000 for anyone 300,000 or less. But what if you don't find that out, you know, before the first meeting? Like, are you even mentioning commission until they get pre-approved?
I am finding out what their price point is before we're meeting. So
okay, so with the intake form?
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to fill that out. I'm going to have that information. And I always say, you know, so I can come to the meeting with customized information for you, a property search and closing estimates, you know, please fill this out in advance. And then they do that. I set up a preliminary search with the maximum sales price that fits their financial criteria. And then I know what price point they're at.
Are you like pre-approving them yourself, or are you giving this information to the lender? Like, how can you be sure of what they would be approved for?
So I'm doing basically, I'm not asking for their income. I'm asking what they can afford to pay monthly. And typically a buyer is usually very attuned to what they can afford monthly. Right. And then I tell them the sales price. It's a lot less reliable for them to tell you the sales price than it is for them to tell you the monthly payment.
Right.
And I also ask, what do you currently pay? Because if I see somebody's paying $1,800 and they want to pay $1,600, well, then clearly they don't know the value of home ownership and the tax benefits. So we need to have a conversation about that. Or B, maybe that $1,800 a month rental payment is not comfortable for them.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, so in the consultation, I'm, you know, going through the closing estimate, and let's say their numbers don't line up in that, you know, with X dollars out of pocket for the kind of home they want based on the taxes and what they think their price point is, the monthly payment might be higher. Or I may lower the monthly payment to match what they're looking to pay, and then show them the out of pocket for that and the kinds of homes. So we're kind of like narrowing in on their affordability, like what they could afford, yeah, and what they're looking for, just to make sure that their wallet lines up with reality. And then, you know, based on that, like if they're a physician, I might refer them to a physician's lender. If they're an investor, you know, and I know that there's a good investor out there or lender for investors, I'll refer them, you know, or a lot of these like first time home buyers, like Wells Fargo has a grant program and Quaint Oak Bank is the other one that has that great program. So I'll refer them. But having that conversation up front with them, you know, I'm doing my consult and proving the value and showing them, yeah, like my value up front, rather than just passing them off to somebody else and saying, you're only worth my time if you have the money.
Yeah.
So even by doing that meeting up front, I do it on Zoom. I don't even meet in person. I do it on Zoom.
Got it.
You know, so by doing it on Zoom, I'm, you know, investing the time already in them,
Right.
and that's showing value already.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then, you know, so with Nathan, we did it in a 2-step process, because if he didn't qualify, like his end of his lease is April and he only had 2K. So I wasn't gonna like do anything further until I knew he'd qualify for that grant. It wasn't worth it, you know? So tomorrow I'm going to go to our conversation and, you know, be like, you know, congratulate him for getting pre-approved for that loan and that amazing grant. And then I'm going to run over some of the closing estimates with him. But I'm going to review his time frame, make sure that if he saw something today, he'd be willing to, you know, pay his lease through April, or see if he could get out of his lease. I think he pays like $500 so a month. So I don't think it'd be too hard to, well, he probably couldn't swing both, honestly, but he might be able to get somebody to sublet or do something sooner. And then I'll, you know, go through those closing estimates. I'll remind him of the closing costs based on, you know, who's paying what. Obviously have to ask him, you know, do you understand how I get paid, or how do you, you know, what do you understand about how I get paid? And then I'll explain that, like, until I ask the listing agent, I won't know if a commission is being offered. And, you know, whatever they're offering up front, like that'll apply towards my flat fee. And then the rest of it will be covered by the grant.
What are your top lenders right now, or who?
Yeah, Quaint Oak Bank, Pat Lopez. So in any of my emails, go to the vendors sheet at the bottom and you'll click on it. It's my spreadsheet of the vendors that I recommend, and Pat Lopez and Jared, his partner, are listed there. So it's like a pilot program that they can't actually promote publicly. But if you know it's there, I would recommend every buyer that you can at those lower price points to get in touch with them, because part of that 25,000 can also go to pay off student loans.
What?
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Pilot program. That's amazing.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm, you know, in my intake form, I ask is, you know, what are the top 3 things that I can do for you to make this a great experience, so that I can earn, you know, 5-star reviews from you and your referrals and future business. And then a lot of the times they're going to tell me, you know, help me find the right house. Don't share me. Explain the process. Hold my hand. What's that?
I didn't hear the second one. I'm kind of
good communication.
Good communication.
Ironically, you couldn't understand that. Yeah, and so that way, in the consultation, as I'm, you know, reviewing their specific situation with them, and, you know, explaining the process, I'm peppering in stories that demonstrate of what I'm going to do for them. And then I'm going to, at the end, you know, normally, you know, I would say, you know, I would first, you know, review their intake form, confirm when they're available for showings, confirm what's motivating them to buy, confirm the type of property they're looking for. We would look at the closing cost estimate. I would hone in, you know, I'd narrow in their search parameters based on the information I'm giving them, so that we make sure that we're only looking at the right homes. So if, for example, they think their price is up to 400 and I really see 325 as the max, I'm only going to set their preliminary MLS search up to 325. And then I'm going to send them to the lender to get pre-approved. And then we can always adjust that max price if there's something that changes once they've talked to the lender. And then, I'll go over, the process flow chart. And then at the end, I'm going to ask, I was like, okay, so, I asked you initially how I can make this a great experience for you and earn all your referrals and future business. And you mentioned, good communication. What does that look like to you? You mentioned somebody, to guide, hold your hand and not pressure you. Tell me more about that. And then I'll just ask them to elaborate, confirm, clarify those things. And then I'll just say, hey, so does it look like we can accomplish this together? You want to work together? And I've never had somebody say no, it's like, okay, great. So the next thing is to discuss, the paperwork, that puts me to work for you, and, confirm, how I get paid. What is your understanding of how I get paid in the process? And then just listen to what they have to say. And then, indicate, as of August of this year, sellers no longer have to offer compensation to a buyer's agent. And until I call the agent directly, I won't know who is or is not offering compensation. Our policy is always to accept the compensation being offered from the seller as a first line of defense. I'm just making this up as I go, as the first thing that we do. After that, if you don't need a seller assist, we can see if we can build in the, if there's an underage, like let's say they're offering 1% and you and I have agreed to 3%, for example, we can potentially finance the 2%, and then as a worst case scenario, I'd be asking you to bring that to the table in cash. And as you've seen, throughout our conversation today, I'm going to more than make up for that, that investment of your money in the long term by helping you identify the right house, know the upfront cost it's going to cost you. So, blah, 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 whatever you say, save you time by consolidating all your showings, advocating for you, blah, blah, blah.
So if I can say, Stacey, I've used the question on your intake form, how can I make this a great experience for you?
Yeah.
To my buyers, right? And they were shocked that I asked that question. By yeah,
that's
they were like,
awesome.
oh my God, I've worked with other realtors before and they never asked that question. They were like, wow, that's a very good question, So I've gotten very positive feedback whenever I ask those questions, because I think it shows that hey, I am working for you and I care about what your needs are, right?
Yeah.
So, I love asking that question now.
Yeah.
I can't believe I've never asked this question before.
Yeah.
So that's actually one of my favorite questions from
Yeah. I mean, and for sellers too, when you're talking to them, you're always confirming, my goal ultimately is to net you the most money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle. And then through the conversation, they're going to tell you what their concerns are. So for example, I have a client moving to Buffalo for relocation, and, they knew that August was going to be slow and this, that, the other thing. And then they kind of panicked. And I asked, has something changed? Because our plan was always, if we didn't get an offer within the first 30 days or before Labor Day, was to basically relist it right after Labor Day, take it down, put it back up in a day. And just to refresh it. And because usually something changed, and they're like, yeah, we just got under contract for a house. So it's people's concerns change as you go through the process. What they're willing to do or take or pay changes the process. And even in that initial conversation, if you ask that question, aside from, making sure you got the job offer in place, and, while you don't need to sell to buy, what are your other main concerns about the sale of your home? I see you have cats. I see you have a baby. Do we need to block out showing times, after a certain period of time or after a certain hour because you need to put the, baby to bed? So, using cues to identify concerns they might have and then asking the question, because you just never know what they're going to say, And I will tell you, I have like, people do not understand how the process works. But like, they have the weirdest ideas,
Yeah.
Like, for example, this one seller, like, if they had just listed their house in early July, as opposed to waiting for that job offer to come in and listing it in early August, like, we would have been on the market by the time their neighbor went on the market and sold in 4 days with multiple offers higher than asking. Same sales price, like asking sales price. We would have had one of those buyers potentially, but we literally listed the day after. And they said to me, they started to question if they had listed with an ex brokerage who is going to promote it in house. They're like, we're confident we would have gotten multiple offers too. And it's like, how does that make any sense? I didn't say that to them, but I was like, well, I can see how the timing of all of this, makes it seem like that. And I can promise you, those agents are not ignoring your house if they have a buyer, So like, asking what people are thinking, or like the for sale by owner that, hired me and said he, didn't want to list because like he knew he needed to, he knew it was a good idea, but because the game had changed, but he had never done it before. So he's like, I don't want to do this, but here's my signature, I'm like, I'm not making you do anything. Right. So he said to me, he's like, every agent is calling to list my house. I just want the agent who has cash buyers in there, that want to buy my house to call me. I'm like, well, they're not calling you. Like, they don't exist, or they don't know your house is for sale. Like, you need to be listed with a listing agent to get that buyer's agent to call you. And so I don't know if you saw the kind of fallacious thinking, but like, it's just so weird what people think. So asking those open-ended questions helps you stand out, like you said, Grace, which is awesome. And, they say in like politics and law, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. But in this case, we want to ask the question that like, we just don't know what they're going to say. And we have to be comfortable being like, okay. So you're thinking that X and Y is true. If I were in your shoes, I would see that. I could see how you think that. That makes sense, the way you're thinking about that. And that buys you a little bit of time to come up with an answer, repeat and approve and give an answer.
Some of my buyers, I remember they told me that they think that we get paid, like from our brokerage, like salary or like, hourly, or for every house that we open. Like they don't know that we're commission only. So they don't understand that. They're like, oh, it is like commission based only. Like they didn't know that we don't get paid until closing. Some people think that we get, biweekly paychecks from our company.
That's funny.
Are you gonna charge a deposit?
No. I mean, I don't see the reason to. Nothing's changed in my business as a result of this. It's now that every buyer's agent needs to operate in the way you always should have been operating. With a buyer's consult, signed agency agreement, you're working for them. There's a difference between the referred buyer, though, I will say, and cold leads. I don't really work with cold leads. I will say this, though, that maybe it was 2 years ago, I helped 2 specific buyers. One I met at an open house of my listing, which I don't really do open houses at my listings. But I did an open house and I met them. They had worked with multiple agents in the past. And I said, hey, let's hop on a Zoom call to discuss everything. And when I asked them, I think that question at the end, they were just like, or they might have just said this without me prompting. They're like, we were so impressed that you offered us the Zoom strategy session, which is what I call it. Nobody else has offered us that. And then with regard to the other buyer who was an investor also on my listing, he was out of town, and I was banking on the fact that an out of town investor might not have the connections to the in town people. And I also was using a showing agent, so there's a degree to which I didn't want him to be a murderer and kill the agent I was working with. So I was like, let me meet you let's Zoom first so I can see you and she can see you and we can get a feel for you. And he was also like, wow, like you just blew me away with like everything you just provided me and showed me. Nobody else has offered me this. And like, he ended up buying that specific listing, whereas the other couple bought. So I think even with the people like, and in that case, I would call them maybe a warm lead because they were on my listing. So they had a reason to reach out to me. And they were easier to set up a session with because like they had something I wanted and I wasn't willing to just show them anything, you know? But then there's like going to be if you have a Zillow lead or a cold lead, you know, how you handle that it might be different than the way you've handled it in the past, you know? And just as one last thing, and I can be on the phone for, let's see, it's 12:28. Like, I just want to see when I get to my destination. I probably have another, like, 8 minutes if you want to stay on, but, I got a sign call essentially for one of my listings that isn't offering a buyer's agent commission. So on the one hand, the benefit to showing her the property is that I will get paid, you know, like, because nobody else has made an offer. So so I do have an incentive to show it, even if I don't get paid extra. But I should make the seller aware, hey, this buyer's unrepresented. You know, I just want to make sure, you know, you understand that if she's okay with dual agency or forgoing representation, like I'm going to be doing dual agency if that's what she prefers, or like if I have to farm her out to another agent, there's no guarantee that they're going to show her the house, you know, like, so I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to handle that just yet with the seller. Cause I feel like if I do just show her the property and then she wants to make an offer, I'm confident one way or another, it's going to be fine. But with regard to her, like I have to figure out, like, I'm willing to show my listings, like what's the threshold for showing my listing. So I told her, you know, in order to sing, I need, you know, you to be pre-approved. So she's at the very least going to send me a pre-approval. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see if there are any other properties that match her criteria and potentially offer to show it to her that same day and do like a mini, you know, consult with her, you know, and I'm kind of like this conversation happened an hour or so ago, like an hour and a half ago. So I'm still processing how I want to do this. I may, if I find her other properties she might want to see, what I'm thinking I might do is send her a buyer agency agreement that indicates that, you know, for my listing, she wouldn't owe me anything extra. For other listings, if she did want to see them, she would be willing to pay. I could find out in advance what the commission is being offered, you know, and so I'd have that information, you know, and then decide if I do want to try to show her those properties. But then ultimately, you know, use that first visit at my listing to have a mini, you know, session, bring my buyer agency or bring my buyer guide and or even send it to her in advance, and see if I can't, you know, sign her up as a buyer too. But I'm still kind of like I said, processing that. And that would be a different process than if somebody just calls you to see a random property that's not your listing, you know? But yeah, but like tailoring it to be just the ones that you show them, you know, on a specific day, or saying that it can be canceled with written notice of a day, you know? There's a lot to talk about. And I know I end up talking a lot. What questions do you guys have?
That's great. I mean, I know what I have to work on. Like I'm ready to like get to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but this was great, Stacey. I appreciate you allowing me to sit in on this and answering the questions and all the information you've given me today. It's really helpful. And I,
Good.
you know, told you before, I really respect you and your business. I can't believe to this day I get birthday cards from you, even though I was never client. I'm just so thoroughly impressed by you. So, yeah, I'm looking
That's really
forward to
funny.
aligning with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys, is Grace still there? Sorry, I can't see.
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have another couple minutes, I wanted to kind of explain like what's going on with my training business to you guys to see,
Okay.
like what you want to do. So like, you know, Grace has been a paying subscriber to my learning management system for how many months has it been, Grace?
Oh my God, it's been a few months now.
Yeah. And you've been a stellar student.
Oh,
Obviously,
thanks.
you've been having success using the things that you're learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I try
Yeah.
to download, all the forms that's on there, and I was like, oh my God, like she's so organized. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this is why you're so
So,
successful.
yeah. So, you know, so Tiffany, I've known you for, I don't know, like 8 years now. Like when did
Yeah,
you,
when I just
yeah,
started.
yeah, a
Yeah.
long time now. So, you know, I've always had a passion for teaching. And, you know, one thing that I've learned in the last 5 years of going, you know, I first got my learning management system up and running starting 5 years ago. It's a very expensive platform.
Mhm.
And what I've learned in the past 5 years is that unless somebody's holding agents accountable to do the work, like at a high level, like agents don't just do the work. And so I'll have agents like I call Grace Seller because she's a self-starter and she's doing the work, you know, on her own. So, you know, the equivalent of like making 5% of my income through training takes 50% of my time. And the learning management system being as expensive as it is, and it's a beast to keep it updated, especially since we've gone through a lot of changes with the agreement of sale
Yeah.
in the past year, in the past month. Like I just wanted to shift away from that learning management system, and I'm in the process of downloading all the lessons. So it's not as like interactive as it was.
Okay.
But like, so we'll be able to share with you, Grace, you know, if you want to continue your subscription,
Yeah.
basically like PDF versions of all the lessons, and they'll still have the links to all the videos and the downloads and things like that.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you a heads up because I think I have the system through like September 6th. And, you know,
Okay.
when I, you know, as of Sunday, I was like,
maybe I should be done
what's
by
that?
then.
What's
I
that?
was gonna say maybe I should be done by then. I'm on 93. I'm at the clients and contracts, week 12. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're flying through it. And so like, yeah, the content is not necessarily going to disappear from the world. It's just, you know, and honestly, like a lot of the stuff about the contracts might be outdated as far as, you know, as how the concessions and the sellers assist, or, you know, the concessions and the commissions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so, oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm just turning and I'm thinking, yeah, so so basically in my mind, Tiffany, like everything we've talked about, I'm like, there's like weeks and weeks of content that you could be going through and doing if you were like a subscriber to my system.
Yeah.
You know, it's just going to be a little bit of a different format, just to make it a little bit more affordable and less daunting. And then, you know, you guys would have first access to when I like update, you know, now that I teach continuing ed, I'm going to have to adapt it to the new agreement of sale. So of course you guys would be the first people, you know, to get that. So yeah, so I just wanted to let you know what was happening. And then, you know, as far as what you wanted to do, Tiffany, if you wanted to be like a paying subscriber, then you'd have access to like the homework. If you're like, yeah, you know what, I need that intake form and that's what I want to work on right now. And I want to work on the conversation. Like, then we can continue to work on it weekly in our calls, and you'd have access to the recordings. And then, you know, I would say, hey, go to week X of this, and you'd have it, you know, at your fingertips.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am gonna go on vacation next week, but then when I come back, I'm ready to like really just go like head on with my business and revamp everything. So I'll be in contact with you. I'm ready for some accountability in my life with this.
Yeah.
So
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I don't know, are you driving or you flying to your vacation?
Flying for both of them.
Perfect. Perfect. If you can, the plane is a great opportunity to like sit down with that mind dump that you did and like
Yeah.
just get all of it on paper as minute as you want to get, put them in those buckets of projects, and then like say of these 20 projects, which are the top four? Of these four, which is the top one? Which is the first domino in that project? And maybe
Yeah.
there's a domino that pushes down a whole bunch of other dominoes, like, yeah, like if you think about like your long-term business, which is your 36 touches, maybe getting
Mhm.
your database all, organized, up to date, tagged. That's one. Oh, sorry. That's one project.
Yeah.
And then the other project is like, okay, how do I get better at converting the business that I have? And
Mhm.
that's like the intake form, process. So you could be like working on two simultaneous processes
Yeah.
to really get
Another
things going.
campaign I really want to do now is also reaching out to my past clients
Yep.
just to touch and also get a review because I
Yeah.
have done some reviews. A lot of them are on Zillow, but then I realize how a lot more are moving towards like Google reviews.
Google. Yep.
Yeah, so I need to work on that. And that'll be a good time
Yeah.
to like just get in
Yeah.
front of your face again, ask for referrals.
So there are two resources that you could use to get people's updated contact information and their birthdays. It's called ineedyouradress.com. So that's
Hmm.
one tool that you could send out a mass email and or text perhaps to get that. And then the other thing you can do is, I'm sorry, I'm just like, what am I doing? Let's see, where am I going? Email me, both of you email me if you want my assistant to send this to you. But
Okay.
I request people to review me after our transaction. So I can share with you. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to bring the dog to the vet and they've got a crane and I got to go around. Okay. So yeah, so email me that and I can have Eric, um, sorry, email you my email template so you can use it if you want to adapt it
Okay.
Okay.
to
Email
asking your
you.
clients for reviews. Um, yeah. Am I just supposed to? Okay, so I probably. Well, hold on one second, guys. I do want to ask you a quick question. Hold on one second. I'm going to mute myself.
Grace, what's your email? I'll just copy you on the email to Stacy
Oh
for
yeah,
the.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna put it on the chat box, so
Okay, cool.
just it's
Make it
better
nice and
that
easy.
way, so there's no misspell or anything. So are you just licensed in New Jersey, or are you also?
And Pennsylvania.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome. Well,
Yeah.
in case if I, know anyone that's looking in Jersey,
Yeah.
I'm only licensed in PA.
Oh, excellent.
But
Yeah, I'd
yeah,
love to
but
have
I'm trying to get my Delaware license because I'm literally 5 minutes away from Delaware. So I was like,
that.
that makes more sense. But my friends are like, why don't you get your license in New Jersey? And I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna start with Delaware first, but if I know anyone, I'll definitely keep you in mind for sure.
Yeah. Can you put your number in the chat too? I'll send you my contact card.
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely love to help your Jersey clients.
Cool. Glad to see you guys connecting. I would love to know what was most helpful for each of you today.
I would
Something that you're
say,
going to implement.
well, definitely the intake form, because I had put together a questionnaire, but I didn't ask the question that, Grace also uses about like, how can I make this a 5-star review type of experience? I love that. And also trying to get like an idea of their price point prior to sending them to the lender. I think it's really important that I need to hear about how much value I need to show before I just dish them off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, that was really good. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
think
I think we
buyer
definitely
financing. Oh, real quick, Grace. Sorry,
please.
knowing buyer financing and being able to identify the conditions in the home that are going to cost people money in the long term that they don't see, I think are the two biggest things that separate me from other agents. So if you are like looking for a way to build your skills fast, I would learn closing cost estimates like inside and out, and then go like shadow 3 home inspections for different homes just to get like a quick study
Yeah.
under your belt. Okay, go ahead, Grace. Yeah.
Oh no, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was actually because I use Kanan from TMK Inspections. That's one of my recommended home inspectors. And we did do a home inspector last week for one of my buyer, and he did mention, he was like, Grace, if you want to come shadow me, you're welcome to. And he actually posted that on his Instagram as well.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the perfect time for you, agents to kind of like learn new skills, pretty much, and having added value. So that is definitely something that I want to start doing, because sometimes I'm curious myself. Like I go, to a house and I always look at the ceilings. I want to make sure there's no like, wet floor or something on the basement. But sometimes I see a few cracks. Like I wish that I know exactly what that is. I mean, of course, like I'm not an inspector, but just kind of give like a general idea of like, oh, okay, this may be an issue or whatever,
Yeah, if either one of you has a car that fits 3 people and you want to drive us around, I'll invite you to my next set of showings with that new buyer of mine.
Oh yeah.
Because I only have a 2-seater.
Oh.
Excuse me.
Yeah. No.
Selective.
I would love